So this here fresh new Pixel 6a is the cheapest of the Pixel 6 lineup, and unfortunately that does mean that some sacrifices had to be made, one of which is the downgraded camera tech compared with the flagship phones. See, while the Pixel 6 and the 6 Pro boast Google's latest 50 meg setup, the Pixel 6a makes do with the 12.2 meg camera sensor from last year's Pixel 5a. But whoa, hold up, don't go kicking over the bins and throwing sausage rolls at the cat in a mad furious rage. You see, the Pixel 6a still benefits from that fresh new Tensor chipset's image processing smarts, and so far after a week of real life testing, I am very happy with the results. For the most part, at least. So here's my full Pixel 6a camera review with special guest star Veronica. Hi Veronica. And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do subscribe and ding that notifications bell. Cheers! Now, as I just mentioned, the hardware here is the same as found on last year's Pixel 5a, so that is a 12.2 megapixel primary sensor with optical image stabilisation and phase detection autofocus, plus a 12 megapixel ultra-wide shooter for when you're shooting proper big stuff. Google's camera UI hasn't really changed up at all for the Pixel 6a, it's still pleasingly streamlined. Definitely built around point and shoot ease of use. You've got a few little different settings that you can play around with simply by dragging down like so. These include the option of automatically switching to night sight modes. You've also got usual timer and ratio action as well. You can quickly and easily switch between the ultra wide and the primary camera sensors like so, and by swiping left and right you switch between the various different camera modes. And last up, when you're in that camera mode, you can manually focus with a quick tap, and this also brings up 3 separate sliders for changing the color temperature. And then on the right edge, you've got a brightness slider and also a contrast slider, which is really handy if your subject happens to be framed against a really bright sky, for instance. And that's basically the extent of the manual controls here on the Pixel 6a. There's no full-on dedicated Pro mode, as this Google blower is very much designed to be a point-and-shoot device. All of the heavy lifting is done by the phone itself, which is great news if you really can't be asked to fanny around with ISO levels and the rest. So the big question, how reliable is the Pixel 6a for your everyday shots? Well, not too surprisingly, it handles a range of conditions with confidence, pumping out good looking pics almost every single time, even if you're not really taking much care at all. In fact, the results really aren't that different to the regular Pixel 6 and the Pixel 6 Pro with their swanky all-new optics, as you'll see if you check out my full Pixel 6 series comparison video. It's proper lush, honest, you should definitely go and bookmark it for later. Every shot captured by the Pixel 6a is packed with detail, even in pretty ropey lighting, while colours are also achingly close to what you'll actually see with the naked eye. Sure, this phone isn't quite as good as its more expensive siblings when dealing with harsh contrast, but you'll only see slight saturation in those bright summer skies, and a minor distortion when it comes to other hues. And yeah, you can piddle about with those on-screen sliders and see the results right there in real time if you want to tweak it and get the shot just the way you want it. But to be fair, in full-blown auto mode without messing around with any of that stuff, the Pixel 6a stands up very tall against its competition. And I had bugger all issues with the focus either, unless I got really up close to my subject. The Pixel really doesn't like getting so intimate, so make sure you take a semi-step back to keep things sharp. And the focus is generally fast enough to deal with moving subjects, only puking up blurry looking snaps when the lighting is a bit pants. And Google has also chucked on a small selection of bonus camera modes that you can play about with here on the Pixel 6a, although nowhere near as many as most brands manage to cram onto their blowers. There's no food mode or other filter shenanigans here to enhance an image, it's all about capturing natural looking shots, which these days certainly has to be commended. All the same, you do have some extra bits chucked on there, including a portrait mode, which is a full-on triumph. The Pixel 6a can freeze your subject in time, usually with zero blur, even if they're bobbing about all over the place, and then rub out the background with some lovely bokeh action. You've also got that dedicated night sight mode, which is proper handy when the lighting gets really dim, and as I mentioned before, the Pixel can even swap to this automatically when it detects you need a bit of extra help. Keep your hands still for just a few seconds, which is easier said than done after a half dozen single molts, and you'll end up with a pic that's certainly a lot brighter and more colourful. Yeah, the results can be quite noisy in extreme conditions, but overall it is top-notch stuff and much better than a lot of other mid-ranges. Swap to the Pixel 6a's ultra-wide shooter and you'll be able to fit a lot more into frame without much of a hit as far as the colours are concerned. The results are still pretty lifelike, and again a step up from what you'll achieve with most other mid-range mobiles. And of course there's no telephoto shooter on here like most of the Pixel 6a's rivals, so if you want to zoom into a shot it's basically a digital crop or nothing. Not great when you're viewing back on a big screen. Now for your home movies, the Pixel 6a can record up to 4K resolution of video footage at either 30 or 60 frames per second, whichever you prefer. And I was again pretty happy with what I saw, and this time also heard. Bung the Pixel 6a on Ultra HD and those visuals are perfectly crisp with a natural finish just like the photos. Just don't get too close again or yeah, things do get a bit bulky. Image stabilisation is pleasingly smooth when you're moving and shooting, so you don't need to worry about standing perfectly still. And when you swap to that ultra wide lens, the transition isn't exactly as smooth as the stabilisation and the detail levels do drop a bit, but it is still perfectly serviceable. Audio is cleanly captured from all sides, and when you're not speaking, the Pixel seems to do a decent enough job of masking wind noise and other irritations.
There's a 2x zoom, in case you want to see how that one works. And go back to 1x zoom. Oh, bit of a speedboat joining the action now.
And then last up, around front, you've got a simple 8 megapixel selfie sensor, and this is fine despite the low resolution, although in lower light you do often get quite grainy, flat looking pics at times. If you're a selfie compulsive, then I would recommend looking elsewhere to be honest, but casual selfie snappers should be just about satisfied. And if you want to shoot some video with that selfie snapper, well, you can shoot full HD resolution, there's no 4K option here, sadly, but the audio pickup seems pretty strong and those visuals ain't too bad at all. So that right there is my full review of the camera tech stuck away here on the Google Pixel 6a, and as you can see, super impressive stuff at this sort of price point. That Tensor chipset definitely helps out with the processing, and you get good looking photos and video pretty much any time of day. It's certainly one of the best camera phones at this mid-range £400 price point, and to be honest, it would probably put up a pretty bloody good fight against most flagship blowers as well. The only thing it's really lacking is the likes of a telephoto zoom. Anyway, enough waffle, that's what I reckon of the Pixel 6a's camera tech. Stay tuned for an in-depth review. My full unboxing is live right now if you want to see how it handles gaming, what the battery life is like, all that good stuff. And I've also done a full side-by-side comparison with the 6 and the 6 Pro if you want to see how the camera chops and all the rest of this smartphone stacks up against its more expensive flagship siblings.
And for more on the latest and greatest tech, please do poke subscribe and ding that notifications bell.